my first big job in high school was working at the Chick-fil-A here in Texas, because that's the big one.
Oh, I have worked on and off for like the last 10 years at different fast food places. I feel you entirely. It's
Same. Mine was working at a Subway, and then I did that for 10 years, and that was really the last job I ever had. Then I was just unemployed.
The only culture we have left in the United States is fast food and sports. The final bastions of America, really. Bread and circuses, as it were. Fitting, one might say.
Psychic Dolphin Garage.
Fortunately, today we're not doing an episode on fast food. Thank the Lord. We have some lovely guests from MoEvilFoods. I guess not officially from MoEvilFoods anymore, so I can't introduce you as that, but rather as organizers.
Yeah, on a different timeline, maybe we'd be still at MoEvilFoods if they weren't.
former employees and organizers at MoEvilFoods.
Yeah.
Could have been management, but really fucked that one up
We
at
tried.
MoEvilFoods. Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Of course, what your favorite fast food is, what the best TV show you've been watching during quarantine.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. So I'm John. I started at No Evil probably around this time last year, and I was fired on the 1st of May. They decided to fire me on May Day with no irony.
Oh my god.
What kind of makes it interesting is that I had moved from out of state to take this job, specifically to move. I moved here to take the job at MoEvilFoods because I saw their marketing, and if you've been to their website, you know what I'm talking about, where they brand themselves as being really lefty, really progressive, really cool. They quote themselves as being revolutionary leaders, like they're leading the resistance and like this food revolution. And I mean, I thought that was cool. I wanted to be a part of that, and I bought it, and I learned I learned a lot from it. But yeah. Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Oh, Taco Bell. Sorry.
Good, a revolutionary choice
Thank
indeed.
you for participating in our corporate team building exercise.
Yeah, I'm sponsored by Taco Bell.
God, I can only dream of the day.
And I'm Megan. I started at MoEvilFoods in December of 2019, and I was a major part of the organizing drive there. Like John, I moved out here after getting the job thinking that it was going to be this really great experience. He's vegan, I'm a vegetarian. We really bought into the marketing there. It seemed like it was going to be the coolest place to work, and that we wanted to make careers out of this place. We wanted to be like those senior people there leading the new food revolution, and it just really didn't pan out that way once their masks came off.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that it kind of aligned with your lifestyle and values. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going there just for the values, but also wanting to participate in the way that vegan food is made and distributed around the U.S. because that's a really without delving too much into the issues with the food supply chain in the United States, at least having delicious access to meat replacements across the board has been a big thing over the past 10 years. So
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't like another job for me. I was unemployed for a bit last summer, and I was trying to really find something I could do that wasn't going to be like the other jobs I've had. I've worked retail, I've worked in hotels. I mean, and I wanted something different. I wanted something that I could stay at and something that would be something that I'm passionate about. And this seemed like the perfect fit. It really did. And it really was truly a very disappointing experience.
And it seems that because it happened so quickly, the Band-Aid was really ripped off, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was looking back at it, it was very quick. As it was happening, it kind of felt a little bit slower because it started very gradually and then it just sped right up, and then COVID just I feel like
Body slammed.
COVID has taken the mask off not only MoEvilFoods, but so many different businesses are showing their real true colors because of this pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
and they're just concerned
Well,
about the bottom line.
exactly. Everybody being laid off, in favor of company stock buybacks and the like across the board, really. So yeah, you guys joined this cool, this cool kid vegan company. It was going to be an amazing job, and you went into it wanting to make it a long-term career. And I had asked this already, but you guys didn't really. This wasn't like we're going to go organize this workplace, and y'all didn't necessarily have a massive background in unionizing either.
Yeah, no, it's not something like no, of course, we didn't go in there with any intention of ruffling any feathers. Like we said, this was somewhere we wanted to go and build a career and have a sense of stability, which you guys know, and I'm sure your listeners know, that's kind of hard to come by nowadays. That stability of it, just stability in general, but it's just really unfortunate the way that it turned out. But yeah, we were really excited to be there. And like Jon said, when we first got there too, I loved the job itself, like the actual process of making the food and cooking it off and going through the process to make sure everything is safe and boxing it up. Like I love that kind of monotony. And I guess maybe that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I really loved the job itself, and I didn't even have any real major complaints when I first started there. There were little things here and there, like, some of the safety equipment. We're working with corrosive chemicals to clean off the dishes that we use all day long. Mind
Mhm.
you, all of these are being done by hand. And you'll find gloves that have holes in them. And, they had like ski goggles at the beginning. I believe it's been updated since. But when I first started there, it was like ski goggles, holes in the gloves that you're using with corrosive chemicals. And it was little things like that that really started to be like, okay, maybe this place needs some work and some help. But it was never anything that was really like, oh my God, I do not want to work here. I do not want to come to work today. Like, this place sucks. It was never like that at the beginning.
Yeah. That's interesting. This is not like startup, like, wow, we just got off the ground. We're getting, hand over fist orders for our supplies. They've been around since 2014, so they're decently well established in terms of the products that they're making and selling, and then their suppliers that they're having to ship the stuff out to. And yet it still felt jank. It still felt kind of seat of your pants.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like there were so many issues with organization, and as far as like meeting goals and different things like that, the goals change halfway through the shift. It was it a lot of it seems super unorganized, but I feel like part of that is because, and this is just my own interpretation of what I was witnessing, but to me it seemed like, we have this goal set, we meet these goals, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, we met this goal and we still have an hour left. How much more can we do to try to kind of build it up? There was no structure to it, in the sense that, like, we knew what we were doing that day. We were meeting that goal and being done. It was just like always chaos towards the end of the night. And him and I both worked on night shift. So it was always just like chaos between trying to clean with giant holes in your gloves and, getting in like 10 more cooks than you thought you were going to do that day. There was a lot of chaos going on there. And I can even like overlook it. And I did at the time, because it's like, okay, they're not Whole Foods. They're not a massive chain. And it just, the little things we could get over, but it was those small things culminating together that, made it make more sense to have the hourly employees, the lowest paid people there, to have a say in the workplace and how it runs on a day-to-day basis. And I didn't think we were asking for that much, but
Yeah, and certainly if there's improvements to be made, having the people that are doing the work, suggesting the improvements, just seems to make sense. Was that the catalyst? Was there something else that catalyzed the push to unionize, or is it just kind of like, oh, hey, we have ideas, we want to make this place better? It was more of a, it sounds like it was more of a passion project to want to unionize, so that there was structure, so that there was help for the owners.
Yeah, and so the summer of 2019, the company itself had been working under a 4-day work week. And so what they ended up doing is they ended up switching from a 4-day work week to a 5-day work week. And they didn't give everybody really a lot of notice with that. And so I feel like I wasn't there for that, but I have talked to people who were, and they hinted that that was a big catalyst for the union drive. And that kind of speaks to what Megan was saying, like about how there was no real structure. And there was like this argument, one of the many arguments that they made against unionizing, but this was one of the big ones, was that this union was going to come in and it was there to, the union supporters were deliberately or unintentionally hurting the company by bringing this union in. And it was never about that. Not for me and not for Megan and not for anybody else who supported the union there. We wanted that union there so it would stabilize the company and give workers a greater say in what happens, and it would give them stability. And the stability part is probably one of the biggest things and one of the biggest reasons for the union in general. It would have put everything into a contract, and it would have made it so they can't say, oh, well, we're going from a 4-day work week to a 5-day work week. And then if you can't make it, if you can't make that work for you, then oh shit. I mean, you're on your own at that point. And there were a lot of people there who had been there for a really long time who couldn't make that work. They had that accommodation was what they signed up for, and they were just disregarded. And it was just like, where's the loyalty to these people?
That makes a lot of sense. As someone who is autistic, I've actually had, like, being able to have 4-day work weeks at jobs has allowed me to keep them, and to think that they would just change something like that without consulting anyone. It's like, yeah, I'd be one of those people who got fucked and just like lost the job eventually. And that's I guess I'm just saying solidarity there. But
Well,
like,
another thing that's really
that's-
especially disgusting about it is that they had a longtime employee there. I couldn't tell you how long the person was there for, but they needed those Fridays off to go take a family member, I think it was his wife, to cancer treatments. Okay, so this guy is like, I can't come in on
Jeez.
Fridays. Yeah. Oh, it gets worse because it's like this guy goes to management and he tells them, I can't be here on Fridays. I took this job because I need to be able to take my loved one to a facility to get, awful cancer treatments on Fridays. I'm not coming in on Friday. And from what we were told, the owner, Mike, just shrugged his shoulders and said, well, we knew this wasn't going to work for everybody. It's like, how can anyone do that? It's unbelievable. So yeah, it was that really that I think sparked the union drive initially before we even got there. And I'm pretty sure that like half the staff ended up resigning.
Wow.
They all wrote letter. Yeah, half. I don't want to say half like definitively, but a large portion of the staff, like they joined together and resigned. They were like, we can't do this, and we're all standing together. We're resigning. Whatever. And it honestly makes me feel kind of bad because it's like I came in December. Was I replacing one of those people? And it's really unfortunate how that happened. But what ended up happening is that after all of those people resigned, the people who were really getting the union drive started and who were all about it, the most of them left because they couldn't stay. So, I mean, a lot of us have theorized that that was the first attempt at breaking up the union. Oh, let's just change the schedule on a whim and everybody will have to quit. And then we'll get a whole new staff in here. So what ended up happening was one employee who was able to accommodate his schedule around what they changed it to. He was being contacted by the UFCW, the union that we were trying to organize with, the United Food Commercial Workers Union. Yeah, okay. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union contacted him because he had signed a card. And they were like, hey, what's going on here? And he just kind of picked up the torch and started to rally back around and try to organize the newcomers that were coming in. And that's when I signed a card. This is the same guy that I'm talking about who kind of took the torch and tried to continue on organizing there. He's the one that gave us both our union cards.
So you guys were not even going into this like trying to rally union. You guys hadn't gotten into this thinking, wow, we're gonna get into this UFCW workplace or anything. And then you find yourselves kind of at the center of the hurricane of not only trying to organize, but also being terminated by the employers for those efforts, for joining in on the organizing.
Yeah.
Okay. You said that it's the UFCW that you're trying to organize with. Like, what are some of the highlights of getting to organize with them? Like, did you guys get to do classes with them? Did they sit down with you and help talk you through how to talk to the boss and kind of talk about the anti-union propaganda that they were going to be showing y'all?
So that's where I kind of differ with the UFCW. I'll preface all of this by saying that the two organizers that we were working with from the UFCW, they were seasoned. They were really nice people. You know, they were always there when we gave them a call, and they were always willing to like print stuff off for us. You know, they were there physically
Yeah.
when we needed them to be there. But quite honestly, we didn't know what we were getting into. Like, we did not know how bad it was going to be. We didn't know how bad the propaganda campaign by management was going to be. I feel like we didn't get a lot of warning about what it would even be like vaguely. Of course, since all of this went down, we've been in contact with the IWW that has a structure that I align more with personally. You know, the whole idea of building the solidarity first and having workers, you know, you don't necessarily have to have NLRB recognition to have a union in your workplace if all of the workers are on board with it. So, you know, but there was no inoculation process, which is really important for anybody that doesn't know what that is. It's, you know, just it's like what you were saying, knowing what you're walking into when you go into an anti-union campaign.
Yeah, at least having them show you the Delta Airlines photo where it's like, pay union dues, you could buy an Xbox.
Exactly. No, but that's the thing. We didn't get any of that. And it's not to say anything bad about the UFCW. I love those guys. They were really great. But at the same time, like, maybe they just didn't recognize how novice we were at all of this. And we could have definitely used more guidance and more inoculation, really. Inoculation, I think, is key, because I think the captive
Yeah.
audience meetings are what really tipped the scales, because I think that we could have gotten either a really close vote or a yes vote as far as passing the union through, had those captive audience meetings not occurred, or not occurred as aggressively as management did them.
Yeah, or if there was the inoculation aspect before we went into those meetings, I think they probably would have been very different. I learned far too late about captive audience bingo cards. If you know what those are.
I've done my 101 training, so yes.
Yeah.
But we didn't know.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. We didn't even like. I learned about that after the meetings, and then when I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit, that's a great idea! Why didn't we do that?" Handing out these little cards where, like, at the door, you can hand them out to anybody that wants. When they sit down, they have a marker and they say, "You're going to pay for dues." You check the box off because they said dues. they fearmonger about sexual harassment or God. There's so many different talking points.
Yeah.
You know, any of the talking points that they use, and then if somebody gets bingo.
The union is a third party.
Yeah.
It's
Cards are
literally
legally
gamifying
binding.
their bullshit. This is great.
Yeah, and you're inoculating people
Yeah.
at the door.
Yeah, you're inoculating people, and you're not like standing up and screaming back at them. That's bullshit. You're just doing it in a much more passive way. So what are they gonna do? Go around and gather up, you know, bingo cards like they're teachers or, you know, adults in daycare again? It's a great way to put them back on the back foot again.
Yeah, and I feel like what Megan said too, just to kind of touch on that about how we don't really even need the union to get what we need done. We really figured that out after the union drive too, because of COVID, and we can talk more about that. I don't know if you have questions and sort of a timeline on how you want this to go, but we really defined solidarity unionism like to a T with
That's
how
very
we
cool.
responded to their COVID response, and I think that's really what made them fire me, because they said, "Holy shit, they don't need a union. They're still organizing without a union, and
Yeah.
we need to get rid of these people."
Yeah, yeah. My only other question was gonna be like, what did you expect from the UFCW? What was the draw of that? And I understand it wasn't necessarily all that had reached out to them or started the process of that, but what seemed to be like the thing that you were moving towards with that? Just getting the contract. That was kind of all that they were pushing you to?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest draw was really that the UFCW had sort of been pre-selected before we got there, so we didn't really have a lot of say in the union to begin with. that we went with. But I mean, yeah, job security in a right to work state. And as so many people learned after the union drive, like 1/3 of their workforce who either got fired or pushed out, there's no job security in the United States, but especially not in a right to work state.
Yeah.
Somebody can, like your employer can stop you at the door, like they did with me, say that they don't like the color of your hair that day, or, as they did with another organizer, your pants are too short. Or, for me, they said that I wasn't social distancing appropriately, which, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that one before.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we don't hear that in Texas. They get up really close to you and they lean in for the kiss and they go psych and then say, please social distance in the store. 1 in 30 Texans has got COVID. Woo!
Well, that's
Because
terrifying.
we're over 1 million cases.
Please
Oh,
stay
it's,
safe,
I think Colorado's like 1 in 45 or something now.
yeah, we've mishandled it so much. Yeah, UFCW, I like that it was the UFCW because we actually have been paying attention to Kroger, who's been negotiating for a new contract, and they are also UFCW unionized. So it's going to be really cool to see what comes out of that. Not that I disbelieve in, business unions on an individual basis, but yeah, surely as a systematic approach, I personally am much more into solidarity unionism, and I would love to hear what y'all did that was much more solidarity inspired and how effective.
So,
it was.
yes, I do want to get to all of that because it was an amazing victory, especially after losing so bad with the union drive. Just one thing I want to touch on before we get to that is how bad these captive audience meetings actually were. Like, it's so important to let people know how bad these meetings are going to be because it was awful. They played up on fears of sexual harassment. They played up on fears. So No Evil does this thing where they'll hire formerly incarcerated folks and different things like that, which is really great. I mean, obviously, being, a felon or somebody who was incarcerated should not be, a reason that you can't get a job. So it's really cool that they made a point to go through this program and hire, felons, ex-cons, all of that stuff. But then they would take this and they would turn around and say to these people, oh, well, the UFCW is going to come in and your job could be in jeopardy just because of your background. They said that it would be harder for, them to fire any sexual harassers that would come about in the workplace. All the while at the same time, they're telling us that the union doesn't have to do anything for you if they don't want to. So it was just a lot of contradicting information and it was just awful. Like I would leave those meetings shaking. Like there were 2 of them where I left crying. Like it was absolutely awful. And we're sitting there trying to explain to the managers and everybody in the room that, this isn't the full story, and we're trying to like play defense with management, which I think is a lot of where we went wrong at these meetings. Just trying to counter all of the propaganda ended up working against us because while we were focusing all of our energy on that, we weren't focusing on the things that actually mattered. It was like we weren't going to people and saying, hey, if you could, name a number, what would you want to make here? What could we fight for here? Where do you see yourself in this company in 5 years? Like, what can this union do to actually help you? Instead, we were just playing defense constantly with management over all of this nonsense misinformation. And I think that really set us back. And we ended up losing pretty badly. Like, what was the number? 43-15. It was pretty much the organizing
Wow.
drive of people. Yeah, it was awful because a lot of us were like, we don't think we're going to win this. Like the day before this election, I'm talking to Jon and I'm saying, I don't think we're going to win this, but I think it's going to be close. Like, there's still hope for this, blah, 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 blah. And we lost so bad and it was awful. Like I just wasn't expecting it. But again, it was like we were blindsided by this entire anti-union campaign. I didn't think that was going to happen. I walked into on a regular basis and I'd walk by all the HR, like not the HR, but like all of the head office people, and they were all so friendly. And when any of the owners, Mike or Sadra, would go by and say, hey, how are you doing? I felt like they were actually asking me how I was doing and not just like, exchanging pleasantries. Like, and it was just so awful Sorry, one last thing. Just I could talk about these meetings for hours,
Please do.
but
This
there
it's
was
important because yeah.
I'm sorry, like I could go on
No,
and
like
on
I don't
about
want to
this.
just interview y'all about answer my 67 questions. Like tell us about the experience because I want to, this should be it's important that we talk about the experiences that we have organizing because it's not something that people hear a lot of. We read a lot of Jacobin articles about, oh, well, this did happen. And it's like, oh, wow, what would happen if I unionized my workplace? It's important that we hear about how bosses act so that we're ready to pick up on that and go, oh, right. They're doing the thing that I heard that they were going to do. And being able to talk to our coworkers about it and show them stuff like that. Because honestly, like unionism is not the answer, but as we're doing all sorts of organizing activities all over the spectrum,
the part of the solution.
Definitely going to be a big part of the solution.
Like,
yeah.
well, if you're going to give me the floor to go on about this, like there was oh Lord, I'm sorry. There was a particular article that they circulated around everybody in the workplace who was eligible to vote. And it basically highlighted Local 1208 in the UFCW. The guys that were running it, the union reps for that particular local, they embezzled a lot of money. Like they stole union dues from dues paying members. And it was a very, very awful thing. The union itself did an investigation and then reported them subsequently. So it's not like some outside force came in and found that the UFCW was doing something crazy. But the way that it was framed to all of us that were eligible to vote, and this is like 2 weeks before the election, we had a total of maybe 7 meetings over the course of 2 weeks, and each of them lasted anywhere between an hour to 2 hours, and where management is just throwing all of these things at us. But essentially what this article said was, the UFCW embezzled this much money and all of these dues were stolen, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, the article that they're circulating, they only circulated half of the article because the first thing I did was go and Google the article. And what you'll find when you Google this article is that they were held accountable for their actions. They had to pay all of the dues back. The guys that were responsible for this crime are facing 10 years in prison. Like, it's no joke. But that was all left out of it. And it was just framed as though the UFCW is going to come in and steal all your dues. It happened right here in Tar Heel, North Carolina. Like, it was just nonsense. So I pointed this out.
I love the first Google result I get is Department of Justice. They're sentenced for embezzlement of union assets. And then the third article I get is the newsobserver.com. Ex-North Carolina union boss gets prison for embezzlement, feds say.
I'm pretty sure that's the article, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just crazy because I pointed this out. I looked the owner, Mike Walliansky, right in the face, and I told him, this isn't the full story. These people were held accountable. Why are you presenting it like, why are you presenting us half the story? Why are you doing this? And he told me, well, I guess you can interpret it that way if you want to. But what I see is blah, blah, blah. Just a bunch of gaslighting. It's like, no, dude, I'm dealing in facts here. Like, these people were held accountable.
You don't understand. We have alternate facts.
We have alternative facts, yeah. It was essentially like an alternative facts moment where he's saying, well, you can interpret it this way. It's like, dude, there's no other way to interpret it. This is what happened. But, it was a lot of that. And I was especially vocal during these meetings because I just can't keep my mouth shut, as y'all can tell right now. But
this is good for an organizer.
It was just unbelievable how I can sit there and be like, no, this is actually what happened. And they're like, well, you can look at it that way if you want to, but we don't want this for our company. Like, dude, stop. But the worst moment for me in these meetings, I can actually think of 2, but one of them that really hurt me, and one of these meetings that I left crying and upset and just like ready to walk out the door. The other owner, Sadra Shadell, like I said, they played up on fears of sexual harassment, and that was her whole speech. She didn't want it to be so, nobody could get rid of sexual harassers because the sexual harasser will be in the union and the union will protect them, and, just all like this horror story. And I politely and kindly pointed out to this woman that sexual harassment and stalking and nonsense like that is a societal problem. Like, you all know this, and so do your listeners, but it's a societal problem. It's not subject to unions. It's not subject to workplaces. It's not subject to one particular sect of anything. Sexual harassment is a problem, period. And you can't say that we don't deserve a union because sexual harassment exists. That's just not a thing. And they also touted around how, different issues about sexual harassment in the UFCW. So I pointed out to her that, hey, these people were also held accountable. It was a struggle, but it always is with issues of sexual harassment. And this woman looked me in my face in front of the entire night staff, and she said to me, well, Harvey Weinstein was held accountable for his actions. Do you think that that makes it okay?
What?
And I'm not kidding. Word for word, this is what this woman said to me. I have it. All the meetings got recorded, so it's out
I
there.
believe this came out of a person's mouth. I'm just still stunned. I'm never surprised, but I'm still always shocked.
It's just the thing that's really offensive about it too is that she doesn't know me. She doesn't know different things I've experienced and what I've been through. She doesn't know whether I'm a victim of sexual assault or not. And she's sitting there saying, "Well, is Harvey Weinstein okay because he was held accountable?" It's like, what are you talking about? Give us a union. Like, it was unreal. It really. Like I said, I will never be able to walk into a workplace again and not remember all of these things that happened, because if the most progressive lefty company can treat their employees like that and talk to them like that and act like they're children that don't know what they're talking about, I just can't look at the workplace the same way again. Maybe I should thank them for radicalizing me. Should I give them a big old thank you? I don't.
Yeah, you have to send Christmas cards every year now. That's how it works.
This is a company that generally likes to use like lefty and proletarian aesthetics on their products and on their whatever bullshit the staff has to see on the walls. I'm sure it sounds like that contributed a fair bit to like that sounds like a very different situation than most people are in, even when it comes to like what you talked about regarding inoculation. Like, this is a company who's already like, we are powered and our strength is the workers and et cetera, et cetera. So when you're going for inoculation, even the standard union rhetoric of like the bosses will say this, the bosses will say that, like you almost have to come up with it. Like, they'll say the same crap they always say, and also it seems like there might be a little bit new of a playbook you have to do for the co-optation of like the word proletariat and shit that these people do now.
Yeah. Which makes the it makes the the betrayal. It makes the the mask coming off feel even worse, because it's like, oh, we're woke. We like all these things. We think that all this stuff is really cool. And then you're just then it's just like skip forward 6 months and it's you screaming liberal at all of them.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Just to kind of touch on some of what Megan said too about the captive audience meetings, I kind of just wanted to throw a couple things out there. One of them was that I think one of the most telling things for me was that they did a whole meeting on collective bargaining, and I raised my hand at this meeting, and they were talking about all the like, oh God, collective bargaining is just the worst thing, and who knows what you could get, your wages might go up, your wages might go down. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? And it was like this very ambiguous kind of thing. So like halfway through, I raised my hand and I asked the guy who was doing the presentation, so can you talk about any of the benefits of collective bargaining? And this dude looks at me and he kind of like shook his head, and he's like, no, like they literally would not say one specific positive about collective bargaining. And like, I knew, pretty early on that these meetings were bullshit, but that was the biggest wow moment for me. Like, are you kidding? I mean, because like Megan said, we were on second shift. And so first shift would give us like a tip off, like, hey, the meeting's going to be about collective bargaining. So I knew going into work that it was going to be about collective bargaining. So I did my homework, and I looked it up, and I researched a pretty decent amount of information about collective bargaining. And the fact that this guy couldn't say one positive about it was just mind blowing to me.
Now, was this somebody that worked for MoEvilFoods that was doing all this presentation stuff?
There were, let me think. There was the plant manager, Becky, who she was demoted, wasn't she?
That's a whole
Okay,
other
yeah,
story.
let's not talk about that. She's no longer with the company.
Uh-oh. When you bust the union so hard that you bust your job.
So there was her, Mike, Sadra, payroll guy, Lewis. So 5 people did the meetings.
Okay.
5 different people.
Including
Yeah, including the 2 owners.
Wow.
But to kind of give you an idea, one of the things that you might be familiar with is that some of the audio that got leaked, which I know you've heard, they've been trying to copyright claim it and pretend that they have rights to it, which is just ridiculous. So I don't know what platform you all host your podcast on, but I have transcribed some of the audio, and I will literally sit here and read off of the choice quotes from these meetings, word for word, in quotes, and tell you who said them.
Always down for
And
that.
they can't copyright that. So let's see. I'm not going to try to imitate them because I don't want to sound like a union buster too much. But let's see. So this is Mike here, Mike Walliansky, CEO. Quote, by choosing UFC Local 1208, you send a message to our investors. You don't want us to look out for you. If that's the case, fine. But just remember at that point, from the investor's perspective, it's business. This is a separate quote. It's a very real risk that having a union at MoEvilFoods will greatly impact our ability to continue raising capital, which risks the survival of our business. Another quote. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're not the only option investors like this have, and we do need capital to grow. It's not optional. Please understand that I have no control over what investors will do. Here's another one from Mike. This union and unionization in general seems to perpetuate values and behaviors that I do not want to be part of our culture. You can hear me, you can see me, it upsets me, it scares me, it worries me. And then he said, nope, okay, we're going to switch over to Sadra. Quote, I would be very concerned that the union would take your harassment complaints as seriously as we would. That's what Megan was talking about. Here's another one. If someone is accused of harassment, we're going to terminate that person, and I'm horrified at the thought that a union that's supposed to represent all of you, including anyone who is subject to harassment, might fight to put that person back to work.
Jeez.
Now, to be fair, police have given unions a very, very bad name.
Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they actually used that as a talking point because they ended once all of this got some of the audio got released and some of this started blowing up on Twitter and with us not being afraid to talk about what happened. They made some. I don't know if it was a tweet or an Instagram post, but
It was a tweet in response to somebody else, and it happened over the summer during the BLM protest.
Oh, see, he knows better than I do. But they basically tried to say, well, they tried to paint like, oh, well, police unions. Yeah, they just basically tried to justify their anti-union stance by bringing up police unions, and it's like. Any person that's relatively on the left knows that there's a problem with policing in this country and that unions are a big part of that. But we're not the police. We're making plant meat. Like we're cooking food. What? I'm not gonna go shoot somebody and have a union protect me. You know, they tried to use that as an excuse though, to justify their anti-union stuff.
The number one thing that our elected officials can do in this country to bust unions is for all of our legislators to form a union to make sure that they are not unjustly manipulated or held accountable by the investors, the voters.
Yeah, they just absolutely co-opt the IWW. They call it the one big union, but it's just the politicians in it. And they're like, see how bad this is? Look at what we're doing. You can't elect us
from
out
all over the world.
we're protected by the union.
Yeah, no, that's essentially what they did.
And honestly, if you look into their investors, it's kind of funny that they talked about the union being this awful thing. But if you look into they have several investors, but one of their investors is called Siddi, SIDDHI, and they actually invest in several different companies. But one of the companies they also invest in, aside from NoEvilFoods, is a company that actually produces meat. Like real meat. So the fact that they're out there saying the UFCW is, this horrible union, while they're taking money from an investor that actually takes part in the killing of animals, which, as a vegan company, what the hell are you doing? Why would you do that? When I learned that, I was like, "Holy shit! Are these people fucking kidding?" I'm sorry. Are they kidding? I don't know if I can curse on your podcast.
You can swear as much as you want.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if it was like a Christian podcast or
Cursing is allowed on the podcast.
Okay. Family
I
friendly.
broke the bleep button like 3 episodes in. It just doesn't
Okay.
work anymore. It sits there and it looks at me. City Investments is invested in a lot of strange companies, some of them that I recognize. Like you said, they're double dipping into companies that aren't vegan and kind of ruining that aesthetic. Once you've tied yourself as MoEvilFoods, into an investor that doesn't even align with your proclaimed values, like you've already lost standing, right?
They did say, well, we can't control what the investors do, and I guess.
Another person
Oh, no.
at these meetings actually pointed out to them, because of their whole scaremongering tactic about how we don't know what investors will do if this union goes through. Like, that was one of their major talking points. Another one of the organizers that was working with us, they said to Mike, one of the owners, Mike, that if we can't control the investors now, if we can't control what the investors do now, then we can't control what they do later. Like, what difference does it make to us? Like, the investors are
Yeah.
going to do what they want, it sounds like. And what is it that he said to them?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, no, it was just like this really nonchalant, something along the lines of like, well, you can interpret it that way. It was completely brushed over. This amazing point that this person made, that you can't trust investors one way or the other. It doesn't matter if there's a union or there's not one. They don't care about us. And it was just a lot of contradicting information.
Yeah, I mean, I'd play the clip, but I don't want your podcast to get pulled. So
Well, what I heard was that I want to take this boot and shove it as far down my throat as I can, and then when I pull it out, make sure that it's polished up as well as possible for these investors.
I
Yeah.
keep hearing the phrase, oh, well, you can interpret it that way, as their just stock
Yeah.
response to, you might have made a good point. Some people may have interpreted that as a good point, but
Yeah.
other people, people who know what's
want
up.
5 more cents an hour and a pizza party.
Jesus Christ.
It's just crazy how a company can just gaslight an entire group of employees. Like, there were probably about 100 employees there, maybe. No, give or take. No, there were
probably less.
there were like 60 employees there that were eligible to vote, or like 55 or something like that. And it's just crazy how easy it is to manipulate such a large group of people that all have common interests. And it's all done through this guise of like, well, I'm this authority figure. I care about what happens to you. We're all a team here. And that's just not reality. Like, the lowest paid employees at your company are not at the same level as you. You're the lowest paid employee at the facility. And you're sitting there talking to the highest paid employees at that facility and having them tell you, well, this is what it is, and this is how it's going to be. And people really just kind of fell for it. It was really sad.
That's the thing that's so frightening, but I don't know. It's simultaneously frightening and hopeful. It's just how incredibly piss poor their arguments are, and how like they just, like, the things they're saying are so clearly nonsense. They're bullshit. It's easy to see through them. People at the meetings, it sounds like, we're seeing through these things. It was all really transparent. And at the end of the day, it's just the fact that they, like, I might just lose my job. Everyone might just lose their job. If I'm one of the people who votes wrong, we're all fucked. And then a lot of people got fucked out, it sounds like, anyway. Everything they're doing is so flimsy. And that's, like, hopeful in that it seems like it's so easy to break through once you find that kind of solidarity amongst everyone that makes them go, yeah, fuck it, stand together. But also, the amount of power they hold is so extreme that they can just, the mask can slip that far. I think they actually said this on Chapo from an episode like a day or two ago, is just the mask will slip as far as it is allowed to slip. And it upsets me that it's allowed to slip this far. They don't even have to be good at fighting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, they control the narrative. So, I mean, they have the power to force people into a meeting and pay them for an hour, 2 hours to sit there and listen to their crap. We don't have that. And that's a huge disadvantage. So
Are you saying we should get that power, perhaps?
we should get the power to put people into meetings. Sorry.
No, just find a way to maybe, like, arrange a little bit of funding here and there by gathering it from some people and say, like, hey, if everyone would like to come to our anti-union, like, get together on the weekend, we'll also pay you for it. or anti-union. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's honestly not a bad idea. I would have done that had I thought of it at the time.
Well, we did have a couple meetings outside of work, but I really feel like we didn't play on that as strongly as we should have. As far as getting people to sort of engage after work and sort of outside of the workplace.
That is a big one. That's hard. That's hard though.
Yeah, no, yeah.
You have to also understand too that like we're talking about, oh wow, it's scary how easy it is to manipulate people like that. But you have to understand the setting that we were in too. So they take us all the way into the back of the building. They would take the entire shift. They had 2 separate meetings each day, morning and night shift, and they would shove like 20 plus people into a tiny room that was probably meant for like 15 people.
Kind of.
Yeah, it had like a U shape to it, and they had the big projector up like we're in high school, teaching us whatever it is they think they're teaching us. But they shove all of these people into a tiny little room. They actually, for the first few meetings on night shift, what they did was they waited right before we were supposed to go to lunch. So they would shove a bunch of hungry people into a tiny room and then aggressively tell us how divisive unions are and how bad unions are and how bad this is going to be. So, you're sitting there, you're average worker Joe, you're hungry, you're tired, you don't want to be here at these meetings. You wish you could be back on the floor. You wish you could be out there sleeping, but it's really easy to manipulate people under the right circumstances. And they had that advantage. They were able to stop work in the middle of the shift. They were willing to cut into profit. They thought these meetings were so important that we cut into profit to go sit and shove a bunch of people into a room that didn't need to be there. And, a lot of people asked not to be there. It was a whole mess.
Well, the fact
It
that
was
they're willing to
awful.
do that is just the biggest red flag anyway.
Yeah.
I just love that everything you're saying is like, oh, yeah, I've heard all of these. These are like things the government talks about as like effective torture techniques and stuff. Like you just find people at their weakest point, bombard them with shit, make agreement with that shit. The only thing, it's just literally let's traumatize and or re-traumatize people, or at the very least inconvenience them so highly they'll just say whatever. Like, yeah, you're right. That shit works.
Yeah, I mean, before we actually started recording, I had kind of compared it to not so much like a used car dealer, but like more like how the government sounds when they're trying to sell you a war.
Yeah.
Like that's what it felt like. It felt like like straight up propaganda. And I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And like what you just said is exactly what it, like how they did it. If you're a person who kind of has struggled most of your life and the idea of having any kind of money taken out of your paycheck scares you, then they're going to scare the shit out of you about union dues. If you're somebody who has been sexually assaulted, they're going to scare you about the possibility of being sexually assaulted at work because of the union. And it just so happens that there was somebody who was there just a couple weeks prior to their first union meeting, anti-union meeting, that had gone through like a stalker situation where this person was on the same shift, kind of being really creepy and I won't go into details, but they were just really creepy, and the advances were unwanted, and there was literally a stalker situation, and they brought that up at one of the anti-union meetings in a kind of a veiled way where they were like, and if there's a situation where somebody's being made to feel uncomfortable, then the union might make it harder to get rid of that person. And the other person who was the victim of that was sitting in the room. So they literally
re-traumatizing.
played on fears of people.
Yeah, no, literally
God
re-traumatizing people just to get a point across, just to put a check mark in their book. Well, we covered that one. We have that one.
Yeah.
Scared enough to vote against it.
And not even just fears necessarily. Like the plant manager at the time was actually vegan, and I'm vegan. So she made it a point to say to me and to say to the few other vegans, you'd be surprised at how few of them there were at the time. It was kind of strange. But they made it a point to say to me, do you really want to be associated with a union that also represents Smithfield? And like that argument, like this, that argument is so fucking ridiculous. Are you kidding? Like, first of all, yeah, they represent Smithfield, but
we just talked about the investors.
Filling my car with gas fuels wars across the world. Like I'm really beyond where my money goes at this point.
Yeah. The UFCW represents thousands. It's like one of the largest unions in the country. They represent so many other people besides Smithfield. So that argument in itself was ridiculous for that reason. But on top of that, assuming that that wasn't even the case and the UFCW just represented Smithfield and then they wanted to represent No Evil Foods, let's just pretend. So fucking what? Like, as if slaughterhouse workers don't deserve to have some kind of representation. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the country. I will say that as a vegan. I don't think that anybody who works at a fucking slaughterhouse should be mistreated or should be treated like shit or even treated like the way that they treat the animals. Like, fuck that. No, they should have a union. I hate Smithfield, don't get me wrong, but like, what kind of an argument is that?
Right. I said the UFCW doesn't represent the chopping knife and the electric probes. Like, they represent the workers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's they've thrown so much at you. They've lied to your faces. They've done their hardest to convince you otherwise. Y'all, clearly have come out of this better for it, more radical even. And yet the unionization effort failed. What do you think you learned from this? What are some of the most important things that you think you've left this experience with?
Maybe one day I will write a book about this. There's so much. But first and foremost, like, one of the most important things to anybody that I could tell anybody, and something that I'll keep in mind for the rest of my life and any job I ever have, is union or no union drive, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, document, record every single thing that happens. Like, record any interactions you have with your manager, document any times you talk to your manager, keep track of that stuff, because that is so important and that will help you, especially in a union drive. Like, that is so critical. The fact that I documented everything, the fact that we have all of this audio, that is really what helped the NLRB case, because we knew what we were doing. We as far as keeping track of everything, that was the one thing we got right, and that's the one piece of advice that I could give anybody. And something that I do, but boy, did I really learn to do that. Like, that is so important. And then solidarity unionism. I know we kind of touched on that, but you don't really even need a union to start with. You can find the smallest thing that's going on at your job. Let's say
There's holes in the gloves.
Yeah, there's holes in the gloves. That's an easy fix. So you get everybody together and you say, hey, do you like getting your skin burned every time you use these gloves? And of course people are going to say no. It's like low-hanging fruit. So you say, okay, why don't we do something about that? Why don't we get this fixed? And why don't we just kind of see who else has this problem, and then maybe we can go talk to the boss about it. That's what we did, and I will swear to it to the day I die. That is why I was fired.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks so much for coming on, Meagan and Jon. It has been a lovely time getting to record with y'all, getting to hear your story, getting to talk about your experience. I really hope that y'all get fired from another job again for trying to unionize, because god damn it, you won't be stopped, and I believe in you that much. No, I hope that you find a better job than this and that you are successful in unionizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for having us too. It's really great. One thing that's another positive note that I can end this on is that the outreach from people who are willing to talk to us about this and just let us go on rants about this and really publicize the story and the way that average workers are treated. It's priceless. It's the kind of stuff that really is going to build worker solidarity, and you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, 100%.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you guys would like to share? Your Twitter accounts?
Plug
Any
your
accounts that
pluggables
you
for
run?
the next time you're
Plug
doing
your
something cool.
Pluggables? Yeah.
Which I assume is all the time.
Really, MoEvilFoods.com, that's MoEvilFoods.com, has a ton of info about all of this, including audio. And then I really recommend following Bertie Gregson on Twitter. Those are my two plugs. I don't think Meagan has any.
Also, MoEvilFoods on Instagram as well, I believe, if that's your platform of choice.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, you're right. There's SoEvilFoods on Instagram, and then there's MoEvilFoods too. Because
Nice.
MoEvilFoods, the regular one, was
Copyright.
yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
they're
I
not
see
a big
2
fan of
and
memes.
I see 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah, 3, and then anything past that number I would not trust because they ended up trying to make their own
Co-op their
phony little
handles.
bot accounts, and
Oh
yeah.
man, that's fucking hilarious.
That's so
I love that.
sad that they're at the point where they're just trying to stop memes.
Yeah.
No, don't meme me, please. Oh, it's a fucking Ben Shapiro energy. All right. Well, I think we're good to close out on Ben Shapiro energy. We do not need any more of that on this podcast. I think between Dennis and Bo, they have that Short King energy covered. So we'll be heading out. Thank you so much for listening to the Psychic Dolphin Garage. As always, we will have our plugs in the recording, and we will see everybody for our Tuesday episode. Howdy, y'all. Don't forget to follow our link tree in the show notes to discover new things like our Discord, social media platforms, and all the places where you can listen to our podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to introduce us and other leftist creators to friends, family, coworkers, your AA buddies. Community is about more than hot takes online. And if you want to support our efforts, you can donate to us at patreon.com/psychicdolphingarage, which is spelled how it sounds. Hope to see you on the stream tonight. Enjoy this music by JJ Demon.
How the fuck I still got a full head of hair? Not a single gray. Fuck the cops, family first, every single day. Bringing a charm when I ring the alarm. My arms got a box cutter insignia. We gotta abolish ICE, we gotta abolish ICE, abolish it. No need to apologize, the Holocaust abolishes. For no reason we colonize the land and put up monuments. Dope needles, dollar signs, the globe stands in astonishment. I hope there'll be a punishment. I really wanna get bloody. I really wanna stand in judgment of anybody taking money from anybody in the struggle. Anybody on a budget. Poor people getting 10 to 20 for some dumb shit. Corporations incorporating a bloodlet. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words, this coup will not be bloodless. Mark my fucking words.